I spent 6 months tracking every single penny I spent. And guess what? I was more stressed and less in control of my money than ever before. Most financial experts would call me a failure, but what if the system itself is what's failing us? In this video, I'm going to show you why traditional budgeting methods are actually designed to make you quit, and the research-backed 3-step system that helped me save an extra $12,000 last year, without ever opening a spreadsheet or feeling guilty about buying coffee. The myth of perfect budgeting that's setting you up for failure. Did you know that 80% of people quit their budgets within 90 days? There's a reason for that, and it's not because you lack discipline. In fact, the problem isn't you at all. It's the budgeting methods themselves that are setting you up for failure. Traditional budgeting has been sold to us as the golden ticket to financial success. Track every penny, categorize every expense, and magically watch your bank account grow. Financial gurus swear by these methods, publishing book after book explaining why you just need to try harder when their systems inevitably fail you. But here's the truth they don't want you to hear. These conventional budgeting approaches are fundamentally flawed. Let's take the famous 50/30/20 rule that gets pushed in every personal finance book. You're supposed to spend 50% on needs, 30% on wants, and 20% on savings. Sounds perfectly balanced, right? Except real life doesn't work that way. This cookie-cutter approach completely ignores the reality that everyone has different financial situations, living costs, and priorities. Think about it. If you live in San Francisco or New York, you might be spending 60 to 70% of your income just on housing. The 50/30/20 rule would tell you that you're doing it wrong, when really, the rule itself is what's wrong. These artificial constraints create immediate feelings of failure when your actual spending doesn't match these arbitrary percentages. Recent research from the Journal of Consumer Psychology found that rigid category-based budgeting systems create what psychologists call mental accounting fatigue. Essentially, your brain gets tired of constantly categorizing and monitoring every single transaction. This fatigue leads to poor financial decisions over time, not better ones. The problem gets worse when you look at what happens to your brain when facing constant decisions. Dr. Roy Baumeister's research on decision fatigue shows that the more choices you have to make in a day, the worse your decision-making becomes. Traditional budgeting forces you to make hundreds of micro-decisions. Is this coffee a need or a want? Should I categorize this as entertainment or dining out? Is this purchase worth it? By the end of the day, your mental energy is drained, making you more likely to abandon your budget entirely. Another major flaw in conventional budgeting is how it moralizes your spending. Traditional systems essentially label expenses as either good, saving for retirement, or bad, buying that latte. This creates an unhealthy relationship with money, where spending becomes a source of guilt rather than a tool for living your life. The moment you frame spending as moral or immoral, you create a psychological trap. When you inevitably buy something in the bad category, you feel like you've failed, which can trigger what psychologists call the what the hell effect. Once you've broken your budget in one area, you're more likely to abandon it completely. This brings us to the concept of budget burnout, a phenomenon that's rarely discussed but incredibly common. Budget burnout happens when the constant tracking, restricting, and monitoring of your finances creates such emotional exhaustion that you eventually give up on managing your money altogether. It's similar to what happens with extreme diets. Restrict too much for too long, and you're likely to binge later. Financial psychologist Dr. Brad Klontz explains that budget burnout often leads to a damaging feast or famine relationship with money. You restrict and restrict until you can't take it anymore, then spend impulsively, feel guilty, and start the cycle all over again. This pattern doesn't just hurt your wallet. It damages your entire relationship with money, creating anxiety, shame, and avoidance behaviors. What's most frustrating is that financial experts continue to push these systems despite overwhelming evidence they don't work for most people. A study by US Bank found that only 41% of Americans use a budget at all, and of those who do, the vast majority abandon them within months. Yet the personal finance industry keeps selling the same broken solutions, blaming users rather than flawed systems. Traditional budgeting also fails to account for life's inconsistencies. Your expenses aren't the same every month. Cars break down, friends get married, children need braces. When your carefully constructed budget gets blown up by an unexpected expense, the entire system feels useless. This creates a demotivating cycle where you constantly restart your budget only to abandon it when life gets messy, which it always does. Even more problematic is how most budgeting advice focuses almost exclusively on cutting expenses rather than increasing income or finding value. This scarcity mindset makes budgeting feel like a punishment rather than a tool for achieving your goals. When your entire financial strategy is built around restriction rather than growth, it's no wonder most people give up. The way traditional budgeting is structured also ignores basic human psychology. Our brains aren't designed to constantly monitor and restrict. They're designed to seek pleasure and avoid pain. When your budget feels like constant pain with little reward, your brain will naturally resist it. No amount of willpower can overcome this fundamental aspect of human psychology in the long term. Consider what happens when you're trying to stick to a strict budget and suddenly face a social situation, a friend's birthday dinner, a colleague's wedding, or a family vacation. You're forced to choose between your budget and your relationships, creating unnecessary friction in your life. This social pressure often becomes the breaking point for budgets, as few people want to sacrifice their relationships on the altar of financial perfection. What these traditional systems fail to recognize is that human behavior is driven more by emotions and habits than by spreadsheets and willpower. No budget can succeed if it fights against your emotional needs and established patterns. That's why we need a completely different approach, one that works with human psychology instead of against it. Here's the truth. Traditional budgeting methods actually set you up for failure because they fight against natural psychological patterns instead of working with them. They promise control but deliver stress, creating an unsustainable cycle that leads to abandonment and financial guilt. The solution isn't to try harder at broken systems. It's to develop an approach that aligns with how your brain actually works, one that focuses on your values, leverages automation, and measures progress in meaningful ways. An approach that understands humans need flexibility, not rigidity. An approach that recognizes money management should reduce stress, not increase it. Think about it this way. Would you rather have a strict diet that makes you miserable but you can only follow for a few weeks, or a sustainable eating pattern you can maintain for years? The same principle applies to your finances. The most effective money management system isn't the most detailed or restrictive. It's the one you'll actually stick with. What if instead of tracking every penny, you focused on aligning your biggest expenses with your core values? What if your money management system worked automatically, requiring minimal maintenance and willpower? What if you measured financial progress by how well your money supports your life goals, rather than how perfectly you stick to artificial categories? These aren't just hypothetical questions. They're the foundation of a completely different approach to managing your money. An approach based on behavioral science and psychology rather than spreadsheets and shame. An approach that recognizes you're a human with complex emotions and changing priorities, not a budgeting robot. The hidden psychological cost of tracking every penny. Speaking of being human and not a budgeting robot, have you ever felt that weird pang of guilt after buying a $5 coffee, even when you can totally afford it? That's not random emotion. It's your brain's reaction to financial micromanagement, and it's literally changing your brain chemistry in ways that make you worse with money, not better. When you obsessively track every dollar, your brain enters a constant state of financial surveillance. This isn't just annoying, it's triggering the same stress response as being chased by a predator. Your body can't tell the difference between checking your budget app for the 10th time today and running from a lion. Both flood your system with cortisol, the primary stress hormone that puts your body on high alert. Think about what happens when you're trying to enjoy dinner with friends, but part of your brain is calculating how this meal fits into your monthly restaurant category. You're physically present, but mentally split between enjoying the moment and monitoring your spending. Scientists call this attention residue, the inability to fully focus on what you're doing because your mind is still processing a previous task. This mental split doesn't just ruin your dinner. Research shows it dramatically impairs your decision-making abilities across all financial areas. When your brain is constantly switching between enjoying life and monitoring expenses, you develop decision fatigue. Your mental energy gets depleted, leaving you vulnerable to making impulsive choices that contradict your long-term goals. Here's what's really fascinating and troubling. The more meticulously you track your spending, the more likely you are to develop what researchers call a scarcity mindset. This psychological state makes you perceive your financial situation as more dire than it actually is. Even if you have plenty of resources, your brain starts operating from a position of lack. This scarcity mindset is particularly dangerous because it creates a self-reinforcing cycle. You feel financially restricted, so you avoid necessary expenses. This avoidance creates real problems that confirm your fears, making you double down on restrictive tracking. It's like trying to diet by starving yourself. It works briefly before triggering a massive rebound effect. Young adults are hit hardest by this phenomenon. Studies show that Gen Z experiences higher levels of financial anxiety than any previous generation. Many feel completely helpless about their financial futures, leading to a nihilistic approach to money management. When tracking every penny only reinforces how challenging the financial landscape feels, it's no wonder many adopt an eat, drink, and be merry attitude toward their finances. The psychological toll doesn't stop there. Have you noticed how some friends always seem to be too busy when activities involve spending money? That's not coincidence. It's a direct result of obsessive budget tracking. People begin avoiding social situations that might put pressure on their carefully monitored spending categories. This social isolation further intensifies feelings of financial anxiety, creating a downward spiral that damages both financial health and personal relationships. What's particularly troubling is how this financial anxiety manifests physically. When you're constantly worried about your spending, your body remains in a chronic stress state. This elevated cortisol doesn't just make you feel lousy, it rewires your brain to make short-term decisions at the expense of long-term planning. The very tool you're using to improve your finances is biologically programming you to make worse financial choices. This helps explain a puzzling pattern I've observed. People who track every penny often end up engaging in what financial psychologists call doom spending. After periods of strict financial restraint, they make impulsive, large purchases to alleviate the overwhelming stress of constant monitoring. These splurges create genuine financial setbacks, reinforcing the belief that they need even stricter tracking. It's a vicious cycle that leads nowhere good. The stigma around financial struggles makes everything worse. Many people suffer in silence, believing their difficulty sticking to a strict budget reflects a personal failure rather than a flawed approach. This stigma prevents people from seeking help or even discussing their challenges, intensifying their isolation and anxiety. Instead of recognizing that the system is broken, they internalize the belief that they are the problem. Consider what happens when you're constantly toggling between budget categories in your mind. You buy groceries thinking about how much is left in that category. You calculate the percentage of your entertainment budget used by a movie ticket. You mentally adjust your savings forecast after buying a birthday gift. This constant recalculation creates what scientists call cognitive load, the mental burden that prevents you from thinking clearly about anything else. This cognitive load doesn't just affect your financial decisions. It spills over into every area of your life, reducing your overall cognitive capacity. Studies show that people experiencing financial anxiety perform worse on IQ tests and have diminished capacity for complex problem solving. The mental energy consumed by tracking every penny literally makes you less intelligent in the moment. What's most concerning is how this perpetual state of financial monitoring undermines the very goals you're trying to achieve. When your relationship with money becomes defined by restriction, judgment, and anxiety, you're more likely to abandon your entire financial plan. The emotional toll becomes too great, and you swing from hypervigilance to complete avoidance. This explains why so many people cycle between periods of intense financial tracking and complete financial neglect. The psychological burden of monitoring every expense becomes so overwhelming that they eventually abandon the process entirely, often making even poorer financial choices in the rebound period. It's the financial equivalent of extreme crash dieting followed by binge eating. The irony is painful. The very tools promising to give you control are actually making you feel helpless. Instead of creating healthy financial habits, obsessive tracking fosters an adversarial relationship with money where every decision becomes fraught with emotional significance. Simple purchases that should bring joy become sources of stress and guilt, even when they're completely affordable within your means. This brings us to a counterintuitive truth that financial institutions don't want you to know. You'll likely manage your money better when you stop tracking every penny. When you remove the constant judgment and anxiety from your financial life, You create space for clearer thinking and better decision-making. Freedom from relentless tracking doesn't lead to financial chaos. It often leads to financial clarity. The most successful money managers I know don't obsess over daily expenses. They don't analyze every coffee purchase or calculate the per-use cost of their gym membership. Instead, they maintain a healthy distance from the minutiae while focusing on the financial decisions that actually matter. They've discovered that financial peace comes not from controlling every dollar, but from creating systems that align with human psychology. Think about how liberating it would feel to buy something small that brings you joy without interrogating that decision. Imagine checking your financial status monthly instead of multiple times daily. Consider how your relationship with money might improve if it wasn't defined by constant surveillance and judgment. These aren't just quality of life improvements. They're pathways to genuinely better financial outcomes. Value-based spending, the first pillar of effective money management. That freedom from financial micromanagement we just explored, it's the gateway to what I call value-based spending. Imagine your money naturally flowing toward what truly matters to you without a single spreadsheet in sight. When you align your spending with your core values, you not only feel more satisfied with your purchases, but research shows you actually make better financial decisions automatically, without the mental gymnastics of traditional budgeting. Value-based spending flips conventional financial wisdom on its head. Instead of starting with arbitrary budget categories that someone else invented, you begin with what matters most to you. It sounds almost too simple to work, right? That's what makes this approach so powerful. Its simplicity is precisely what makes it sustainable where complicated systems fail. Think about it. Traditional budgeting tells you to cut back equally on everything that falls into the wants category. Value-based spending says, wait a minute, not all wants are created equal. Some of those so-called wants might be deeply connected to your core values and bring tremendous fulfillment to your life. Others might be mindless purchases that don't actually move the needle on your happiness. Let me walk you through how this works in practice. The first step is identifying your top 3 to 5 core values. These aren't vague concepts. They're the principles that genuinely drive your sense of purpose and happiness. Maybe you value family connection, creative expression, lifelong learning, physical health, or financial security. Whatever they are, these values become your financial North Star. Once you've identified these values, they create a natural framework for your spending decisions. No more arbitrary rules about what percentage should go where. Instead, you ask yourself a simple question. Does this expense align with my core values? For example, if family connection is one of your top values, spending money on a weekly dinner with your parents or siblings isn't a splurge. It's a value-aligned investment in what truly matters to you. Someone who values creative expression might prioritize spending on art supplies, music lessons, or concert tickets while cutting back on trendy home decor that doesn't spark joy. This is where the magic happens. When you make these value-based distinctions, you naturally become more selective about expenses that don't support your values. The person who values learning might happily spend $200 on books and courses while feeling zero temptation to upgrade their perfectly functional smartphone. Someone prioritizing health might invest in quality groceries and a gym membership while easily saying no to impulse purchases at the mall. What's fascinating is how this approach completely eliminates that false needs versus wants dichotomy that makes traditional budgeting feel so restrictive. Instead of artificially dividing expenses into good and bad categories, value-based spending recognizes that some discretionary purchases deeply enhance your life, while others are just passing whims. The research on this approach is compelling. Studies show that when people align their spending with their personal values, they experience a significant boost in overall life satisfaction. They report feeling more fulfilled with their financial choices, and, here's the kicker, they naturally make fewer impulsive purchases. Not because they're forcing themselves to resist temptation, but because those temptations simply lose their appeal when measured against what truly matters. Think about your biggest expense categories right now. For most people, that's housing, transportation, and food. Are those major expenses aligned with what you value most? If family connection is your top value, but you're spending 70% of your income on a luxury apartment that keeps you working so much overtime you never see your family, that's misalignment. But if experiences and adventure top your list, and you've chosen a modest apartment so you can afford to travel regularly, That's perfect alignment. This is where value-based spending differs radically from traditional budgets. It's not about cutting back on everything equally. It's about being intentional with your biggest expenses so they reflect what matters most to you. When your major spending categories align with your values, those small daily purchases become much less important to your overall financial picture. What's fascinating about value-based spending is how it eliminates that psychological tug-of-war we experience with traditional budgeting. The concept completely transforms the narrative around loud budgeting that's been gaining traction, especially among younger generations. Instead of vocally defending why you're not spending money, value-based spending empowers you to confidently explain what you are spending on, because those expenses directly support what matters most to you. When you approach your finances this way, the practical implementation becomes surprisingly straightforward. Create a list of your core values, and then categorize your expenses based on how well they align with these values. You'll quickly start noticing patterns, areas where your spending is perfectly matched to what matters to you, and others where there's a disconnect. For instance, someone who deeply values environmental sustainability might realize they're spending hundreds of dollars monthly on fast fashion that contradicts this value. This awareness naturally leads to more intentional choices, not because some budget spreadsheet demanded it, but because the misalignment becomes obvious. The beauty of value-based spending is that it creates natural boundaries without restrictive rules. When you know exactly what matters most to you, decisions about where to cut back become obvious. The things that don't align with your values simply lose their appeal. That's why people who adopt this approach often report saving more money without feeling deprived. They're simply redirecting resources toward what truly brings them joy. This approach also solves one of the biggest psychological traps of traditional budgeting: the tendency to obsess over small purchases while ignoring the impact of big ones. If your housing costs consume 50% of your income but don't align with your values, no amount of skipping coffee will fix your finances. Value-based spending keeps your focus where it matters most, ensuring your largest expenses reflect your priorities. What's particularly powerful about this method is how it adapts to your unique situation. There's no one-size-fits-all template because everyone's values are different. Two people with identical incomes might have completely different spending patterns, and both could be perfectly aligned with value-based spending principles. The person who values security might prioritize aggressive debt payoff and emergency savings, while someone who values community might allocate more to entertaining friends and supporting local businesses. The psychological freedom this creates is immense. Suddenly, you're no longer fighting against some external standard of what you should spend in each category. Instead, you're honoring your unique priorities and creating a financial life that genuinely supports what matters to you. Let me be clear. Value-based spending doesn't mean abandoning all financial responsibility. It's not a license to overspend or ignore your financial reality. Instead, it's a framework that helps you make more intentional choices within your means. The difference is that those choices are driven by your internal values rather than external rules. What's most exciting about this approach is how it grows with you over time. As your life circumstances and values evolve, your spending naturally shifts to match. There's no rigid system to overhaul. Real-life transformations, from budget-stressed to value-aligned. All this talk about value-based spending probably has you wondering, does this actually work for normal people with real bills and financial stress? It's one thing to hear about a concept, but seeing it transform real lives makes all the difference. Let me introduce you to Jamie, a dedicated nurse who spent 3 frustrating years cycling through 6 different budgeting apps, trying desperately to make traditional budgeting work. Despite her best efforts, Jamie constantly felt like a financial failure. Her budget never seemed to match her real life. Every unexpected expense threw her carefully crafted plan into chaos. What made the biggest difference wasn't finding the perfect app. It was discovering that aligning her spending with what truly mattered to her was the missing piece all along. By prioritizing spending on experiences and family time rather than feeling guilty about small purchases, I finally created a more intentional financial life, Jamie explains. Her transformation wasn't about becoming more disciplined or finding the perfect budgeting template. It was about changing her entire approach to money. What makes Jamie's story particularly powerful is how this shift affected her professional life too. As a nurse working demanding shifts, she found herself increasingly burned out from both job stress and financial anxiety. When she started prioritizing her spending on health and personal growth, she discovered a much healthier balance between enjoying life now and planning for the future. This kind of transformation isn't unique to Jamie. Financial wellness surveys consistently show that people who practice value-based spending report significantly lower levels of financial anxiety and stress compared to traditional budgeters. The difference isn't just psychological. It translates to real financial progress, too. Take Michael, a high school teacher who felt financially trapped despite carefully tracking every dollar for years. His budget categorized education expenses as optional, which meant he constantly felt guilty about investing in professional development courses. When he examined his core values, continuous learning ranked at the top, yet his spending pattern completely contradicted this priority. By restructuring his finances to allocate more toward educational opportunities, Michael not only felt more aligned with his values, but also unlocked career advancement opportunities he had been putting off. Within 2 years of making this switch, he qualified for a position with a 15% salary increase, a financial win that no amount of penny pinching could have achieved. What's fascinating about both Jamie and Michael is that neither one needed to track small purchases obsessively to achieve their financial goals. They focused instead on ensuring their largest expenses, housing, transportation, and career investments, aligned perfectly with their core values. The small daily purchases that traditional budgeting systems often vilify became largely irrelevant in the bigger picture. This approach works especially well for people who value freedom above all else. Consider Alex, who realized that traditional career paths and homeownership didn't match his core values. Instead of forcing himself into the conventional financial mold, he restructured his spending to maximize investments in passive income streams while minimizing his living expenses. Today, he lives in a modest apartment but allocates significantly more to assets that generate recurring revenue, a perfect alignment with his value of financial independence.